Hey everyone, welcome to a special crossover episode of Locked On Lakers and Locked On Kings for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky, Matt George here. Lakers versus Kings tonight. Big implications for both teams and for the entire Western Conference. Dare I say all of humanity. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day. Also Locked On Kings, if that's your jam. Matt George certainly would appreciate it. Is always yours is always free, and it's also never behind a paywall, I assume. And people can go to Locked On Kings and enjoy and see all of this magic happen. And of course, we have we're with Matt George, Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky, Matt George here for tonight's game, Lakers versus Kings. If you do not know Matt, he is the host of Locked On Kings. He is a major television star in Northern California. And is very dialed into what's going on up there. And this is one we wanted to talk about. Like, the Kings just beat the Lakers. Now the Lakers are going up to try to figure out a way to beat the Kings. But this one has big implications, not just for the for this sort of matchup between the two teams, but like the way the Western Conference sorts out. And all of this is stuff we want to get into. But first, Matt, hi.
Hello.
Why has this matchup been so heavily tilted to the Kings of late?
Well, it's about time the world, abandon the championships, abandon what happened in the playoffs between these two teams. It's about time that the world recognizes that the Lakers are the Kings' little brother. It's about time, right? Finally, the world is balancing itself out. Small market Los Angeles bowed down to the capital of the state of California. That's Sacramento. It's just, I don't know. It's a good matchup for the Sacramento Kings. And to be honest with you, if the Kings had made it past the Warriors last season, which they were very close to doing so in that first round, of course, revisionist history, a lot of Kings fans were looking forward to a Kings-Lakers series because I think in Sacramento, there was more confidence that the Kings would perform better or match up better against the Lakers than they did the Warriors in that series because of how the Kings like to play, how fast they like to play. Although there's a certain experience gap with a guy named LeBron James and Anthony Davis there. Although speaking of little brothers, Anthony Davis is Domantas Sabonis' little brother and never beat Sabonis in a game. I just got to make sure I point that out. But in general, I think it's just the way the Sacramento Kings like to play, and also the fact that, if we're being honest, guys, the regular season matters, I think, a lot more to the Sacramento Kings than it does the Los Angeles Lakers. So, and I've been consistent with that throughout this season. Like the regular season is where the Kings need to implement a lot of their growth into the contender that Mike Brown wants them to become. They can't just wait for the playoffs compared to a team like the Lakers where in my opinion, it doesn't matter how the Lakers get in. If the Lakers get in, they're a threat because they're the Lakers and the team and the talent that they have on that roster. Sacramento has sometimes behaved like that this season, and they cannot afford to. And that's why they're in this play-in, barely playoff mix right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. They always talk about styles making fights. And to me, stylistically, the Kings are a bad matchup for the Lakers. Like if you asked me which team could go further than each other in the playoffs, or which team I actually think is better on balance compared to the rest of the league, I would lean slightly towards the Lakers, not heavily, but I would still say the Lakers are a better overall team. The Kings are, in a lot of ways, the worst of all worlds matchup for the Lakers because the Lakers have a difficult time containing quick guards, and the Kings have two in De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk who can be absolute killers. And the Lakers often go as Anthony Davis goes, and Anthony Davis can have difficulty with physical big men. And Domantas Sabonis is a really, really physical matchup that is said rightly has been Anthony Davis's big brother of late. Like when you watch, we can talk a little bit about the guards in a second, but when you watch this matchup over the last few years between Sabonis and AD that has been, for the most part, very one-sided Sabonis.
What are you seeing? 9-0 was. I saw the number after going back to Indiana. For God's sake!
But beyond the results of the game, I'm talking about just if you want to boil this down in a positional matchup, because they are often matched up against each other between Davis and Sabonis. Sabonis has won the game within the game. What are you seeing a lot that explains that?
Well, I think the versatility of Domantas Sabonis frustrates a lot of people. He can play physical to the point where he'll battle you down low. A lot of people think that he initiates a lot of contact, which he absolutely does. Some people
say it's only because he does.
Yeah, he does. He does initiate a lot of contact. He's not afraid. He's an undersized center. Like, people don't realize he's 6'10". Like, he's not he is 7. Oh, there's my son. Hold on. We're gonna have to bye, Arthur. He's not a 7-footer. Like, he's a. You want to say hi to the Laker guys?
No, yeah.
Okay, come say hi to the Laker guys. Come say hi. Say hello.
Hey, buddy.
All right. Now say boo Lakers. All right, good enough.
See, that kid knows what's up. That kid knows what's right.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's all right.
Having a 2-year-old, you never know what's going to happen. Back to Domantas Sabonis. See, I am Domantas Sabonis. That's Anthony Davis right there. That's the image that I wanted you to go for there. But I mean, the physicality that Sabonis plays with, but also the versatility of Sabonis, because his first instinct is not to score the basketball. His first instinct is to get his teammates involved. And that's where I think you brought up the quick guards. They play such a heavy factor into this, because Sabonis is looking to work with Monk in the pick and roll. Sabonis is looking to work with De'Aaron Fox and get De'Aaron downhill as much as he possibly can. To me, it's all about getting everybody else involved. And Anthony Davis, I think, always has to keep kind of his head on the swivel a little bit and try and find who's going to be attacking him at any given time. And if Sabonis is doing his job right, it could be coming from him. It could be coming from Monk. It could be coming from Fox. It could be coming from Keegan Murray, even or Harrison Barnes at times as well. So when I watch Anthony Davis playing Sabonis specifically, I see Davis having to worry about more than just his matchup. He has to keep his head on the swivel of where's Sabonis going to go with the ball, or is he going to come right at me?
Yeah, it's funny. Well, this is not necessarily funny, but it is important to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. It's, when you talk about defense in that way, when the Lakers lost to, who was it, Andy, before they won 2 in a row, AD was really frustrated with the defense and how he felt he was being left out to
drop. Was Sacramento.
That was Sacramento. That's right. And the criticism that he took for Sabonis's good game for not being able to protect the rim against Fox and Monk, getting in foul trouble again and all this other stuff. I think when the Lakers aren't operating well defensively, this is where things start to feel like they are falling apart, where too much is predicated on whether or not Anthony Davis can basically be the wall of defense and hold a Lakers defense together essentially by himself. When the Lakers are dialed in and playing well, that's not as necessary. And so, Davis has a little bit more help. The penetration isn't quite as strong. He's able to roam off of, somebody. This is where, not having a guy like Jared Vanderbilt available who can guard up a little bit in terms of size, but also down hurts the Lakers, because it's harder to play Anthony Davis off of certain players when Jackson Hayes is your only other tall human.
There's also nobody you can ignore in the starting five with Sacto. Like, there's no, he's a really good player and he's having a terrific season, but Aaron Gordon is a guy that teams often do sag off and take their chances as like the least bad option in terms of defending Denver. There is nobody that you can realistically do that with Sacramento. So it makes it so, you're either putting, say, Rui, someone like that, or LeBron on Sabonis, trying to find something where AD could still be help side while checking somebody else, or, which is what is actually happening, AD ends up just having to check Sabonis, which for the most part has not been working out particularly well.
I want to ask you, Matt, because, okay, fine. We've spent 10 minutes praising the Kings. Look how nice it is. Like, they beat the Lakers a lot. And so we've tanked our own listening numbers, viewing numbers for a very important Wednesday. But so when we come back, though, I want to talk about what ought to be the things that threaten the Kings in this matchup. And then there are some really interesting parallels between the way this season is going for Sacramento and the way this season is going for the Lakers. I want to get into that and the Western Conference writ large. We'll do all that stuff next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, exhaust kits, everything you're looking for. Speed, power, style. eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what it is you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring that win home. Keep your ride or die alive with ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers.
What ought to threaten if things are going well for the Lakers, if not just versus the Kings, because apparently the Kings are just invincible. What ought to scare teams about a matchup with the Lakers, even beyond just the obvious Anthony Davis can be Anthony Davis, LeBron James can be LeBron James?
Well, specifically, I mean, the Kings, there's a very clear blueprint of how to defeat the Sacramento Kings specifically. So that's what I'll speak on. If you can get, the Kings have essentially a core four. I'm not going to call them a big four because they haven't earned that yet, but they have a core four of Fox and Sabonis, Malik Monk, and Keegan Murray. If the Kings get 3 out of the 4 of those guys to play well, they win a vast majority of the time. And playing well is like scoring 15 plus points or flirting around 20 plus points. If all 4 of them do, you're losing no matter what. If only 2 out of the 4 of them do, the Kings lose a vast majority of the time. There is no wiggle room between 2 out of the 4 and 3 out of the 4. So if you get beat by Fox and Sabonis, but Monk and Keegan struggle, you have a great chance of winning that basketball game. On the defensive end of the floor as well, the Sacramento Kings, while they're trying to emphasize improving defensively and had marginal improvements, at home, they play far worse defense than they do at home. It sounds like a joke, but it's really not.
All the distractions in Sacramento, obviously.
For sure. One of the blueprints to success against the Kings in Sacramento is go down by 20 points. I'm not joking. If you're trailing by 20, the Kings will 100% take their foot off the gas and let you back in. This Kings team is just notorious for blowing double-digit leads at home. But I mean, on top of that, like, Kevin Huerter is a walking target. And at this point, every single team in the league is going right at Kevin Huerter, to the point where Mike is basically having to take him and keep him off the floor for extended stretches. Kevin has not been able to make the consistent impact as a three-point shooter and three-point threat this season that he was last season. Some of that is mismanagement by the Kings. Some of that is just Kevin's not able to live up to defensively what Sacramento needs out of them. And then, like, I think it's just a combination of everything. Physicality is also something that Sacramento really struggles with. They just lost to the Rockets for the 3rd time this season because the Rockets aren't afraid to manhandle them. They just lost at home, blew a 13-point lead to the Rockets at home the other night because the Rockets went physical and dominated the 3rd quarter, where the Kings only scored 14 points and turned the ball over 8 times. So if you can get this Kings team out of their rhythm, if you can get them to turn over the basketball, and if you can target their weaknesses on the defensive end of the floor, you can beat them. Like, the Kings are a very beatable team. The frustration with Sacramento is the Kings can beat anybody on any given night. The Kings will also lose to literally anybody on any given night. And to me, it's the Kings play upper.
You just described the Lakers, by the
Yeah.
way. Right.
And I don't know if this is the same thing with you playing up or down to the level of competition. Like Kings fans might have more confidence in their game against the Milwaukee Bucks than they do in a game against the Detroit Pistons, because the Bucks are a good basketball team. Same thing with the Lakers too, because the Lakers are a good basketball team in a playoff hunt. So I don't know. I mean, it's just such a Jekyll and Hyde syndrome with this Kings team.
Lakers are 16-12 against, I saw this from our friend Alex Regla at Silver Screen and Roll, 16-12 against teams in the top 10 in point differential across the league, better teams in the league. And this is, that's better than almost every team in the league. So like they can beat or lose to anybody. A lot of similarities there. Do want to let everybody know, quick reminder, 7:00 Pacific time, Lakers versus Kings. You can catch every minute of the Lakers or Kings hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Kings or search Lakers. Just search. Just start searching. We in Los Angeles rescued Malik Monk. We nursed him back to health.
Yep.
We rehabilitated him, and then we released him back into the world like a little baby bird. And you guys are up in Sacramento are benefiting from that.
Unfortunately, cap rules prevented the Lakers from being able to afford to keep the bird.
Yeah,
they had to find him a new forever home.
Nobody feels sorry at all for any cap issues by the Los Angeles Lakers, by the way. Outside of Los Angeles, nobody cares.
The Lakers wanted to keep him. It was he was coming off a vet minimum, and unfortunately, they turned Malik Monk into a very good player. And even worse, it's impossible to be mad about it because the guy's so damn nice, so likable.
We are currently not replicating the same thing with Cam Reddish, but that is a different story entirely. So in the game last week, Monk burned the Lakers for, I believe, 26, which was like twice as much as the Lakers bench scored collectively. When Monk is able, you talk about him as one of the guys to put a lid on, if you can do that. When he is contained, what do teams tend to do? Because the part of the problem with the Lakers have right now is they are thin, and the bench production is very light, and some of the defensive combinations don't, just based on who's available, are not terribly effective for limiting a guy like Monk. When teams have been able to put a lid on him this year, what generally are they doing?
This is a really broad way of answering this question because there are a million ways to do this, and some of them are effective one night and not effective the other night. But it's limiting the pick and roll. When Malik runs an effective pick and roll with every single big man on this Kings team, every single one.
His assists per 36 assist percentage, they're career bests in Sacramento by a pretty wide margin, and without his turnovers really getting out of whack either. Like he showed flashes of playmaking as a Laker, but also had a lot of flashes of getting out over his skis. As a King, he seems to really have gotten this to a place where it's just more under control and more effective.
Well, Malik is chaos, and I mean that in a good way. And he's found a way to, what he talks about a lot is he and Mike Brown go at each other a lot, by the way. Like Malik and Mike jaw at each other more than anybody else on the team, but it's because there's two competitive guys that really, really want to win. And they have a good relationship, but sometimes the camera will catch them going at each other every once in a while. That being said, like Malik has been very open about Mike has allowed him to be himself. And Malik being himself is the chaos, is that chaotic energy, those crazy passes, that pick and roll, throwing lobs, like pulling up for three if that's what he feels he needs to do. Sometimes it gets out of control, but more often than not, over the last couple of years, Malik has used that to his benefit to where, especially coming, this is why Mike Brown and the Kings refuse to start Malik, is because that chaos off the bench has changed the game for the better for Sacramento so many times over these two seasons that they just don't want to risk losing that. And it's impossible to replace, as I'm sure the Lakers are figuring out and working out right now as well. So going back to your question, Brian, it's pick and roll defense, right? It's making the right decisions because he can run an effective pick and roll with Sabonis or Alex Len or JaVale McGee or Trey Lyles or whoever he's out there with who's playing the five. He can run an effective pick and roll with. But it's not just him with the assists like Andy brought up. He is not afraid to use a pick and roll to get downhill and try and attack the basket and either get to the line or finish around the rim. So really, if you can throw Malik off of his rhythm in the pick and roll, everything else kind of follows suit a little bit. That doesn't mean that he can't have a hot night from 3-point range, and we've seen him catch fire on plenty of occasions, but it feels like his rhythm is dictated off of his on-court relationship with his big man at any given time. And then it kind of flows into when he's playing with Fox, his relationship with Fox on the floor and how they kind of bring back that Kentucky backcourt. But it all starts, in my opinion, with the pick and roll.
Lakers are a confounding team. It sounds like we've spent a lot of time talking about the same kinds of things, just because there are times, like, both teams very much have tilted towards offense over defense, but there are times when the Lakers defense actually does look good, where they hold Oklahoma City to 104 points, and they do like legitimate defensive things. And I think the frustration with the Lakers is that sort of ability to beat or lose to anyone, but also not look like the same team for more than 3 or 4 games in a row. And when I think about where the Lakers are, and we'll talk about this in the Western Conference playoffs coming back, part of the reason I'm still a little skeptical about the Lakers, despite the fact they've beaten every good team in the league at least once, is that they haven't won 5 games in a row yet this year. And I've never seen a team go deep in the playoffs when you can't string together wins in the regular season in that way. So I'm curious what you think about that, what both of these teams could do in the postseason, and what's waiting for everyone in the West. We'll get to all of it next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, just you against the numbers. You pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then just watch the winnings roll in. It is demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can possibly turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and Goblins, they are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red diamonds or green goblins get you different payouts, and Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25%, providing you even more value, and it's an excuse, part of the theme, get yourself some tacos, which is a win in and of itself. Prize Picks also offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this basketball season. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Locked on Lakers also brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. Get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from another retirement account with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info, the claim is as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. So Matt, like, if you look at the standings, and I don't know where the Kings are in this year. The Lakers have played the Thunder really well, not the Nuggets. They just beat Minnesota and have generally played them pretty well. They played the Clippers pretty well. They did blow out the Pelicans once, but that's been a little bit dicier. They've beaten the Suns more than they've lost to them. They're getting beat up.
2-1 on the Pelicans this season.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I had it backwards in my head. The Kings have not been a good matchup for the Lakers. The Mavericks have not been a good matchup for the Lakers. So when you start looking around these things, like, I can absolutely see scenarios where the Lakers get bounced in the play-in. And I can also see scenarios where they actually are kind of fortunate to draw one of the better teams in the West and at least get out into the second round, and we'll see what happens from there. With the Kings, like, do you see like a potential here, and just the conference in general? How much is the order in which everybody finishes going to determine who advances? Because to me, at least, and I know Andy and I have talked about this a lot, this Western Conference playoffs, because all the teams are pretty legitimate, feels so much more matchup dependent than normal, which is already kind of matchup dependent.
Yeah, I mean, I think rule number one for Sacramento is avoid the play-in at all costs, because so much of this season, I think, is about getting back and having another first round playoff series and comparing what you did last season to this season. And I think this season in general for Sacramento is very much they brought everybody back. Now let's separate the boys from the men. And I say that in kind of a harsh terms, but like, I think we found out over the course of this season which guys Mike Brown's going to roll with into the future and which guys the Kings are likely to move on from this offseason. And I think they want the playoff context of that as well to help make those final decisions. But the play-in, to me, especially if, let's say, the play-in is what it is right now, which is the Kings in 7, Mavs in 8, and then Lakers and Warriors in some combination of 9 and 10. All three of those teams, I would argue, should have a leg up on Sacramento in a one-game play-in. They should. Like the idea of the Kings, whether they're at home or on the road, facing the Lakers for a winner-take-all game or the Warriors for a winner-take-all game. Like, those are doom scenarios, I think, for Sacramento, because in those situations, just like Game 7 last year against the Warriors, Steph Curry can go for 50. Nobody else has to do anything, and that's enough to bounce you. So the Kings are looking for a best of 7 to really see where they end up. That being said, very similar to what you guys laid out, like the Kings are 2-1 against the Thunder this year. The Kings are 2-1 against the Minnesota Timberwolves this year. They're 3-1 against the Denver Nuggets this year. Their nightmare matchups have been the Rockets for some reason, who hopefully we don't have to worry about. The Pelicans, who the Kings will face 5 times because of the in-season tournament, and the Pelicans have beaten the you-know-what out of the Kings every single time they've played, and they have one more game coming up. And then you have teams like the Los Angeles Clippers, who the Kings have finally beaten, but that's a matchup nightmare for Sacramento because of their length and athleticism on the wing, which Sacramento significantly lacks. So there are, to me, if the Kings finishes a 6th seed and just make it to the playoffs outright and then get one of those doomsday teams, I'm hoping they don't get swept. Like, I think they'll put up a good fight, win a game or two, but that's still a significantly better scenario for me than avoiding those teams going through the play-in route and losing likely 2 games. I don't think the Kings are going to drop to 9 or 10. So losing 2 games in both rounds of the play-in and not making the playoffs outright, I just think that's about the worst case scenario the Kings could ask for.
That's interesting that you say that, Matt, because at the risk of being overly reductive and armchair quarterback about the last game, armchair psychologist, it felt a lot to me like the Kings just wanted that win more than the Lakers. Like, given how the Lakers, by their own admission, relaxed after getting up really big, and the Kings did a better job keeping their focus, keeping their fighting. Like Anthony Davis recently said that it was after the Oklahoma City win that seeding doesn't matter to the Lakers, and which has some nuance to what I think he meant, but it certainly did not age well on the heels of that loss to Sacramento. Like, it feels like there is an urgency, if nothing else, that Sacramento is playing with. And I get it, given how collectively their playoff track record would not give them the automatic confidence, right or wrong, that the Lakers would have in believing, like, you know what, just give us an opportunity and the opportunity will take care of itself.
No, I'm happy to hear that perspective, that you do think and see urgency from Sacramento, because Kings fans at times would say the exact opposite. Because what we saw from that game, what we took away from that game, is the Kings were not ready to go in that first quarter against Los Angeles, right? The Lakers came out and were beating the brakes off of Sacramento. It was a massive game, and the Kings didn't look like they cared. And then they woke up a little bit. And that's been an issue with this team, has been they wait until they're down big or their back's against the wall or they're running out of time to suddenly make that surge and make that push. They barely beat the San Antonio Spurs in Sacramento a handful of games ago because they made a late surge, a 7-0 run over the final 50 seconds with De'Aaron Fox out after being fouled out to literally steal that game at home. There's like it's a joke of the cardiac Kings in so many ways, but the Kings, the sense of urgency sometimes needs to be woken up in them by them going down big or being put in a scenario where they have to go out of attack mode and flip into survival mode. And I think survival mode, the Kings can be dangerous in survival mode, but if the Kings try and ride survival mode, not just in the playoffs, but through this playoff race, I think more often than not, they're going to find themselves in a corner.
You know what, though? When you think about it, though, I mean, not that this is the ideal way for Sacramento to do it, but when you think about the players that they have, survival mode, which I think by definition can be very helter-skelter, very chaos, because you're just trying to claw your way out of a situation. The Kings have really good personnel for that. Like De'Aaron Fox is difficult to keep a handle on. He's left-handed. Like, he's difficult to guard on a lot of different levels. You talked about Malik Monk being chaos in a good way on the floor. Domantas Sabonis is an extremely unorthodox player, like in the way that things are run through him. Like during that game, I tweeted out the D in Domantas stands for dribble handoff, because it seems like that's all they do with the guy. Yep. And for whatever reason, teams still struggle to keep up with a play that they know is coming over and over and over. Like there is a team that if you're looking to keep things, or they're a roster, if you're looking to keep things weird, like Sacramento is pretty good for that.
Yeah, and I agree with this current team. And what's funny is this is what Sacramento and myself specifically have been battling with this team all year long, which is play with the roster that you have versus play with what you want to become. And Mike Brown is very much about building a championship contender, and this is what he believes it takes, and using all of his experience. And he has no interest in being a Mike D'Antoni type team that scores a boatload of points but flames out in the playoffs every single year because the defense picks up and they go cold and then they can't hang defensively. Mike has been very honest about that. Meanwhile, you have a roster that is stacked with offensive talent that doesn't do much for you on the defensive end. So play with the cards you have.
I recently looked up some of the defensive numbers, Matt, for Sacramento, because the Lakers, after having a stretch of games where they were awesome defensively, the last 15 games, their defense has fallen off a cliff. Sacramento's is one of the only teams that has actually been worse than the Lakers over the 15 game. Like there are a lot of major defensive categories where the Kings are like 25th or lower. Points per game, defensive rating. Like about the only thing they do well is keep opponents off the offensive glass. They're pretty good with that.
And Andy, what's interesting there is Mike would absolutely agree with you and say that's the reason the Kings have been losing recently, and logic would tell you the same thing. But eye test tells me when the Kings are going through these, they've been the one thing that Sacramento struggled all season long with is going on these ridiculously bad runs, or they're on the wrong end of like 20-8, 20-4 runs that can completely flip a game. It's offensively where Sacramento falls off a cliff. Defensively, we know this team is bad. When Sacramento offensively goes through these lulls, when they miss shots, they're in trouble.
When you are not a good offensive or a good defensive team, it is that much more important to be a good offensive team, because
Correct.
when the Lakers, the other night, this was all the games at this point in the season blend together. I don't think this was the Minnesota game, but I think it was the Milwaukee game. But where they're going really well, things are looking great, and they had about 8 minutes of it was as if you had put, like a team of sixth graders on it, like the YMCA.
That was Minnesota.
It was Minnesota against the Bucks, or against the Wolves, and but still against an NBA team. It's like they suddenly couldn't pass, they couldn't dribble, they couldn't shoot, they couldn't do anything.
Yep.
And that let the Wolves back in with 14-1 run. And so that it is that much more important to be good offensively and have the details right on that side of the ball. It's fascinating. Like you have two teams that are obviously too good to be bad. Like these are not bad basketball teams. And I can picture they're both good enough to win a series. Like, they've got good enough players to win a couple. But it really is amazing how I think more than any other teams in the West, the Kings and the Lakers share a lot of similarities this year. You can catch everything that's going on with the Kings, if that is your jam, with Matt George and Locked On Kings. And again, major television star up there doing the sports. And so we appreciate.
You think he looks great here? Wait till you see him made up. In
a suit in a
studio.
Oh,
the man is gorgeous.
So Do want to remind people 7 o'clock is the tip tonight. You can catch every minute of Lakers and Kings hometown broadcasts on the Sirius XM app. The Sirius XM app, search SXM, and you find it that way. Can you say SXM app? I cannot. I've been trying.
Yep.
I've been trying for like 2 years and I still can't do it. Matt, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, guys, as much as Lakers and Kings interactions can be a pleasure. Although I will notice something that I'd like to submit a complaint about is on the layout here that we have on YouTube. I'm below you. This is not okay. The Kings belong on the top. Remember, Kings big brother, Lakers little brother. As long as we have that established, that's all I care about.
You can't light the beam down. Like the pyramid looks like it's going down as opposed to up right now.
That is true.
Good conversation, Matt. We'll talk to you later.
It's a pleasure, guys.